Hey everyone, I'm Aaron Caffin, VP of Marketing here at Bigleaf Networks, and thanks for joining us for our third Networking from Home Q&A session on fixing choppy voice and video calls in the home office. It's great to see so many folks here today, and it's not super surprising. The last couple sessions that we've done a poll of how many folks have been hearing complaints about performance issues with applications like Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and the results have been pretty staggering. We've been seeing close to 80% of you are hearing these complaints. And while there are some tried and true methods for addressing these issues in the office, a lot of those challenges become a lot harder in the home because you don't always have the kind of visibility and control over the network that you're used to in the office. So we're going to talk about that today. Before we get started though, a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, we will have time for some Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you have questions at any time, feel free to put them into the questions box in GoToWebinar. We'll also be recording the session, so don't worry about taking screenshots or taking notes. We'll send you all a recording after we're done with this. It'll be probably a little bit later today. So with that out of the way, I'd like to take a minute and introduce Bigleaf's founder and CEO, Joel Mulkey. Thanks for joining us, Joel.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Aaron, for kicking us off.
Absolutely. So, like a lot of you out there, I've now been working from home for a couple of months for the first time. And the same is true, frankly, for a lot of your team members and a lot of your clients. In fact, 85 million people are estimated to have started working from home since the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. And I've also, like a lot of you, experienced that when I went home and started working from home, I started having issues with communications apps, specifically for me, Zoom. Constantly cutting in and out, sort of getting choppy. I'd get the dreaded "your internet is unstable" message and all the video would go black. And I spend a lot of my day communicating with people. So that was not only annoying, it was really disruptive to my day. And this is something that a lot of folks out there are seeing. So real quick, I would like to run that poll for the audience, and it's going to launch here. I'd like to kind of hear from you guys if this is a complaint that you're hearing from your own team members and customers. Should have a poll that just jumps open for you. Go ahead and click your answer and hit submit, and we'll just give you guys a couple seconds to fill that in. All right, you're starting to see some results coming in here. It's looking like the vast majority is yes, which is, again, not horribly surprising. I'll give this just one more second. All right. So the results we found, 90% of you said yes. And again, not horribly surprising. This is in line with what we've been seeing in our other presentations. This is a big problem that a lot of us are facing. And the reason that we're talking about this is because this is really Bigleaf's wheelhouse. Bigleaf was founded to make life easier for folks who rely on the internet. And we do that by making business applications work over any internet connection. And that includes the one in your house. But we're not here to talk about our product today. We're here to talk about the questions we're getting around these video and voice issues. Specifically, what causes video and voice issues? What are the specific challenges of running video and voice applications in the home? How do you track down the cause of those issues? And finally, the $64,000 question, what can you do to fix it? So I've invited Joel here because he is one of our resident network experts to answer some of these questions and hopefully help you guys get to a better place with your video and voice calls. Sound good, Joel?
Yes.
All righty. Well, let's jump in with the first question. This is kind of a broad one. but what causes all of these voice and video issues in the home office?
Yeah, and there can be many different answers, really depending on what the issue is. For example, are we talking about voice that's too quiet or that's too loud and distorted? Are we talking about choppy voice, or there's a delay where you talk and then somebody talks over you because it's too long of a time period for your voice to get to them? So you've got to kind of isolate what we're talking about. At the end of the day, there's a number of to play. You can have audio and video sort of capture issues with your local microphone or video camera, lighting, audio settings on your computer. You can have network issues in your LAN, your Wi-Fi setup. You can have computer issues. You can have resource problems in your computer running out of CPU horsepower, for example. You can also have issues where you connect to the internet, so your equipment, your router, your firewall, and then the internet path, the WAN from you to the application you're using. And then there can even be application issues. Maybe the application you're using is overloaded or having a problem. So you've got to figure out sort of what piece of that puzzle is causing the problem, and then isolate out what's causing the issue in that segment of the path.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the folks at home are seeing this. I'm getting a lot of video and voice choppiness on your end. I know we're going to do a little digging into how to diagnose this stuff later, so maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the unique challenges in your home setup and what you're doing to address those.
Yes, I will show you guys what my home connectivity looks like, and can open my world of adventure to you.
So I think there's an impression, valid or not, that there's more of these voice and video issues in the home than we typically experience in the office setting. Do you think that is likely the case, and if so, why?
Yeah, there are. I mean, my house is a great example of this. I am nowhere near a hub of strong connectivity, and you'll see this in most homes where, and we talked extensively in our first episode about this, but I'll cover it again briefly here, where you've got business environments that are typically close to geographically strong areas of internet connectivity, small cable distances from internet hubs to your office building, for example. Whereas at home, you might be, I'm 30 minutes out from any sort of decent internet connectivity. A lot of users, even in suburban areas, you're thousands of feet, maybe miles away from places where internet connectivity is really strong. And when you need to get the signal to that home, there are degradation that happens there. You do lose quality that the equipment tries to make up for, but there are limitations to that. The other part of that is oversubscription, where you only have a certain amount of bandwidth available on the internet and on pieces of the internet, devices, whatnot. And when you try to connect to houses, especially houses that want to stream video all evening long, you can't afford the price point that would be required to give you full clean bandwidth. So you've got scenario where you just have to shove a ton of data into the pipe and hope that it works out okay. So that oversubscription problem causes issues downstream at homes that isn't typically as bad in the business environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it might be worth a minute to describe to folks the unique situation that you're in and how it's actually kind of miraculous that you're able to be doing this video call at all, even with the issues you're having.
Yeah, so I live out in a rural area, and I don't have any wireline connectivity. I have local fixed wireless internet. I have a cellular connection, and I have satellite. And so we'll show you in a minute here, when we come to troubleshooting, what do we look at when we're evaluating types of connectivity? How do we isolate what causes problems and what doesn't? And can find answers to the question, why is my audio or video choppy?
All right, well, I think that segues nicely into the next question here, which is, hey, there's lots of different things between my microphone or my camera and Zoom servers. that could be going wrong? How do I even start diagnosing if the problem's the computer, the Wi-Fi, the internet connection, or maybe the provider itself having issues?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is kind of translate what's going on into where it might be happening. And some of that takes sort of a, especially if you're like an IT person and you're translating from the user's input, if they say my voice is robotic, or it was choppy, or it sounded like I was in a room, you got to sort of interpret those symptoms into the reality. So if it was my voice sounds funny, it sounds tinny, or it was too quiet, or it was distorted or fuzzy, those tend to be local audio problems. Were they using the microphone in their computer instead of their headset? They were wearing the headset, but they didn't know that they didn't have it selected. Or was the audio level setting correctly? If you haven't set the correct input in your application and you don't have the audio level set right, your voice might be way too quiet, or it might be way too loud, even to the point of distorting.
Right.
So that's a good first thing to take a look at, is figure out, do I have the right audio settings set up? The next piece of that is my computer healthy? And we can look at like CPU usage as a thing to dig. Is there enough computing horsepower to figure out how to encode the video, encode it, and send it, and then decode the video that's being received so you can view that? All of those things come into play, and it takes a decent amount of horsepower, even in a modern computer, to do that well. Once the video or audio is encoded, then you have to send it out to the other end. And now you're talking about the network path. And so you've got your Wi-Fi. If you're on Wi-Fi, you may have a firewall or router, and you may have a modem, some sort of device to connect you into your ISP or ISPs. And then from there, it's the WAN path out across the ISPs to the remote endpoint, to Zoom server or whatever you're connecting to. And each of those can generally, if it's a network issue, you're going to see similar symptoms wherever in the network the issue is occurring. If it's an audio issue, we talked about some of those quality things you might hear about. If it's a network problem, that's where things like choppiness might manifest. I mean, you guys have probably seen it on my video today. Some of those symptoms of blockiness, reduced resolution, and you can interpret some of that to where, for example, if there's choppiness or resolution drops down, that can often mean the connection is fine most of the time, but there's intermittent jitter or packet loss. If the resolution stays down low, or there's excessive delay, where you're talking over each other, that can mean packet loss or jitter are high and it's constant. So in my case, I'm running some tests. I have intermittent jitter going on right now. So you probably have, rather than a constant delay, you have intermittent periods of blockiness or audio quality problems. Yep. And then if it's a total freeze up, maybe you freeze up for 10 seconds or you lose connection. In that case, that's an outage. So something in your network has stopped sending traffic and you've completely lost connectivity. So once you've identified, is this an audio issue? Is this a resource issue? A network issue, then you can move to hopefully resolving that problem.
Yeah, and that brings us to that $64,000 question. Once you start getting an idea of what the problem is, what can be done to help home users in various situations with these call quality issues?
Yeah, well, I'm the perfect test case today. Let's troubleshoot. Cool.
All right.
So, Aaron, is my audio too quiet or too loud?
I'd say audio's about right, at least on mine.
Okay. So then I probably don't have an input issue. I don't need to dig into my microphone or the audio settings. So what I do know is it sounds like I've got some choppiness and some things dropping out, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So
and
I want to find
this is an important thing to tell people, is that when you're watching your own video on Zoom, that's a local feed. You're not seeing necessarily what everyone else is seeing. So you do have to have somebody else on the other line telling you what your quality issues are.
Exactly. And that can even clue you into what the problem is. For example, Aaron, you look beautiful. I haven't seen you getting choppy. So I probably have an upload issue rather than a download issue. Right. And that's a great way to isolate. Is it a one directional thing? If so, which direction? Asking the participant on your conference call what's going on.
Yeah.
So what I'll do, knowing that I have an upload issue, that could be, I'm having a hard time compressing video properly. So I can go in and actually take a look at that. And I'm gonna pretend I don't know what the problem is, because I have more tools running since I have Bigleaf. But Aaron, would you share the screen so I can show folks how I might identify if I've got error?
Yeah. All right. You
Okay,
should have control now.
great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm on a Mac. I'm going to go into Finder, and there's this application called Activity Monitor that I use. On Windows, I think if you hit Control Alt Delete, you can go to Task Manager. It's a similar tool. So I'll open that up. And in here, I want to sort by CPU. And I can see that GoToMeeting is using a lot of CPU power right now, but that might be fine. Down at the bottom shows me kind of an aggregate view of, do I have sufficient CPU capacity to do everything I need to do? So here I have 73% idle CPU. If that was below about 10%, it may very well be that you don't have enough CPU horsepower available to do the compression and decompression you're trying to do. But here I've got a lot of idle CPU, which means my computer's, sure, it's working hard, GoToMeeting, all that stuff, but there's plenty of extra time left for other tasks. It's not running out of power. So I don't believe that I have a local resource constraint related to CPU power. If I did, I could quit other things, like, for example, for this webinar, I paused my box sync utility because I know that can take up a lot of CPU power occasionally and spin up the fans in my computer. So you can do things like that if you know that you have some CPU constraints. So I'm going to quit out of Activity Monitor. Again, on Windows, you can use Task Manager for something similar. And so now that I know I don't have a CPU issue, I need to find out, do I have a network issue? Since I have Bigleaf, I can cheat. I'm going to pretend I don't have Bigleaf for a minute so that I can walk you through one way to go about this if you don't. The first thing you'll need to know, because we want to know where the network issue is go into your network settings and find out the default gateway IP address in your network. So I'm on a Mac here. I went into the network settings. I'm connected to Wi-Fi. And if I hit advanced and go to TCP IP, I can see the router IP address. And in Windows, you can get to something similar by going to the status of your network connection. And that router IP address is the next hop from a network perspective that my computer's talking to get out to the internet. So what I will do is I will set up a ping to that. So I've opened up 2 terminal windows here. On a Mac, you can get to that. I think it's normally in the utility folder, but where is it? Yeah, here, terminal.app. In Windows, if you go to run and type cmd, you can find something similar. And so I have 2 pings I want to run. I want to run one to my default gateway IP address. That's basically the other side of my Wi-Fi. It's my Wi-Fi router. And then I also want to run one out across to the far reaches of the internet. For me, I'm pinging Google based on using Bigleaf for my network. I know that should provide a decent result. You can ping other things if you want, but something that you believe will test most of the network path. So I'll run both of those at the same time so I can see what's happening where. And immediately I see on my Wi-Fi side very low and consistent ping responses. So I can see I've got just 1 to 2 milliseconds of responses. That's healthy. But over here, I see something unusual. Well, not for me, but unusual for plenty of people, which are very high response times. 300 milliseconds is not normal for the internet. That would be typically a bad sign. And then here it just jumped down to 20 to 40 milliseconds, and now it's jumping up to 300 again. And so over here, my Wi-Fi test is remaining clean. Oh, here I even lost a packet. So there's a little bit of packet there. And wow, it's jumping up to about 900, 1,000 milliseconds of delay. So something's going on with my internet connectivity. At this point, if I didn't have Bigleaf, I probably want to try a tool like a trace route. And a great way to do that, if you know Linux decently, is run MTR, or if you're on a Mac, but there's a nice graphical utility for that we recommend to people on Windows called Ping Plotter. And this will test where in the path is that latency or jitter or packet loss happening, and it can be a great mechanism. For me, since I have Bigleaf, I get the easy answer, which I'm going to go to our dashboard and show you what's going on there. And Aaron, are you able to understand me okay enough to walk through that dashboard?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Great. So the dashboard here, I can see is telling me some information already, even on the overview page that I've went to my home in it. I can see that I'm not using too much bandwidth compared to my speed package, because that's a good thing to know. Packet loss are increasing. These were green before we started the webinar, and now they're yellow, which tells me, because these are an average over the last hour, so I know that something's up with my connectivity. I can already see WAN 1 and WAN 3 appear to be having issues, and WAN 2 is doing okay. So let's see some more data here. On the performance tab, I can see I was having a good experience, frankly, until this webinar started, and then the world's fallen apart. I guess we wanted to have a special demo of how bad it can get. This was not purposeful, but I can see here I've had a bunch of jitter, latency jumping up, and even a couple spikes of packet loss. And I can zoom in on that if I want and see exactly when they happened. And so this is obviously the cause for the quality issues you might be seeing, or I'm having some WAN issues. So now I know as a user already where to focus my energies. I've eliminated my audio input. I've eliminated my computer as a problem. I've eliminated my Wi-Fi. I know I have a WAN problem. And I went through 10 minutes of how to show you that. If you have Bigleaf, you could pull this up in 10 seconds and see you have a WAN problem. So that can be really helpful. But you can certainly do a lot of this without Bigleaf. I have 3 internet connections. We can see here it's classifying my traffic into different categories. We won't dig into that today. But down here is where the meat of the issues, which are these alarm graphs. So these are measuring packet loss, latency, and jitter, and showing them to me in real time. We can see this circuit, it normally has problems, so I don't think of it as the most dependable one. It does give me some decent throughput, but this is a great example of where throughput does not equal quality. I can go to speedtest.net and get a good result on this internet connection, but it has like constant quality issues as they relate to the needs of voice and video. So let's take a look at my next one. I've got an LTE circuit here. We can see I've been running a lot of voice and urgent traffic over it this morning, and typically I do. Bigleaf uses this connection for a lot of stuff. And normally this circuit is very clean, you can see, but look what happened. Today, it's become very unhappy. Something happened on this LTE connection just during our webinar to screw up the ability for me to have clean connectivity. Because I don't have a clean circuit here, Bigleaf would normally avoid that for this critical traffic and would normally put it on this LTE path when it's happy and clean most of the time. But today it has had some sort of an issue. And then the last connection, I have a satellite connection. And we can see it gets used more in the download direction than upload a lot of the time. And here's why, is because the download side is very, very clean. The upload side is decent, but we can see there's some definite latency spikes. And satellite has a baseline latency that's fairly high. So when I'm scrolling back up through this data, if I look at like these 300 millisecond pings, what that is likely my Bigleaf service realized that the other connections were unhealthy enough. It should send some of the traffic, probably half of it in one direction, through the satellite connection, and leave the other direction through other connections. So satellite's normally about 700 milliseconds of latency. That's why I see there about half of a satellite worth of latency, because it was using that one circuit for one direction.
I think one thing that would be
so
interesting.
Hopefully that.
Go
ahead,
I
Aaron.
was gonna say, yeah, one thing I was gonna sort of interject here, I think would be interesting to point out for folks is we get the question a lot about, you know, we're having problems with one of our employees or customers' home audio and video. Should we just upgrade their internet connection to a faster internet connection? I think one of the really interesting takeaways from what you're showing here is you're only using 4% of your total capacity. You've got plenty of capacity on your connection. It's other things like latency and packet loss and jitter that are getting in the way of this particular issue.
Yeah, this wireless connection is a perfect case study of that, where I've got 7 by 3 megs approximately when I go to run a speed test, but the quality is poor enough that we can't do things like an audio video conference without noticeable symptoms. And so normally Bigleaf handles that well. It's going to move traffic around in real time. Unfortunately, right now, I don't have a single connection that's even decent. And it helps in that case too with prioritization, but there's only so much that anyone can do in that scenario. So it's a great troubleshooting tool. I'll pass the screen back to you, Aaron, and
Yeah,
hopefully that was a full explanation.
absolutely. So let's show. Oh, there we go. Alrighty. Well, yeah, and you know, obviously there are lots of ways you can start fixing these issues once you've identified them. You can build in a redundant connection. You can add more connection. I think the point here is these are some great ways to start diagnosing and getting to the point where you have the visibility you need to reliably tell a customer or a team member, this is what we need to do to address your issues if they're chronic issues like this.
Yeah, for me, I know I need to go take a look at that cellular connection and figure out why it's not behaving.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's dig into some of the questions that have been coming in from the audience, because I know we have a few minutes here left, and I want to make sure we get to some of these. The first one was, are you brothers? No, I can see why you might have that. You might have that thought, but no, we are not in fact brothers.
That's hilarious.
At least not by blood.
Yeah.
So
We do look fairly similar, I guess.
One of the questions that was asked, I thought would be interesting, Joel, to talk to. It was, are customers expected to do this? Can they call support and get help with troubleshooting? And are you getting a lot of calls to your support team about this issue?
Yeah, I mean, everything I just walked through in troubleshooting, our support team is prepared to do with folks who call in. Of course, we encourage some learning and understanding the basics yourself, but this is our bread and butter. If you've got an application problem, we need to help you figure out where it is and why it's happening and get it resolved. That's what we do every day. We're well known for it, and happy to help.
Cool.
Was there a second part of that I missed, Aaron?
Oh, they were asking if we were getting increases in number of support tickets about call issues.
Not that I have heard of, so nothing major. I think the nature of the calls has changed a little bit. They're work from home sort of calls, more so than corporate calls. I mean, we have a ton of corporate customers, so that hasn't gone away or anything. I think probably the bigger piece is just this shift to more SaaS and cloud. We are continuing to see that.
Yeah. So great question. All other things being equal, do different connection types such as DSL, cable, fiber, et cetera, perform better for video conferences?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are realities there. For example, wireless connectivity is typically not as reliable as landline, as I'm a good example of. Once you have a landline connection, cable versus fiber versus DSL, reliability tends to be fairly similar. They're all going to be subject to network maintenance issues, backhoes, and people messing up router configs and things. Fiber tends to be the standout if you want lots of upload bandwidth capacity. But for most connectivity, I mean, fiber is no silver bullet, as we've talked about. There's definite quality issues with it, like any other medium.
Cool, cool. I know we're kind of running up against the end of the half hour. We have a few more questions, but we'll go ahead and reply to those questions by email. A lot of them are product related. And that sort of does bring me to sort of the last part of this. We do have a home office solution that is designed to help with these things. We wanted to make sure we spent our time today talking about the questions that we're hearing and giving more information than product pitches. But if you would like to learn more about the home office solution, I just put up a poll. Go ahead and just click yes on there, and we can have somebody follow up. There were a couple questions about getting a demo or being able to provide a demo for a customer, for a team member. we are more than happy to help you out with that. Just go ahead and click yes in the poll box that just popped up on your screen, and we can follow up with you afterwards for a more in-depth demo. While we're doing that, I do want to remind folks, if you ever have any questions or if there's anything you need beyond what we've talked about in this webinar, you can always reach out to us by email at sales@bigleaf.net. If you're an existing customer or partner, you can always reach us at support@bigleaf.net, or you can use our support phone line, which you will have access to. And all of this information and lots more is available on our website at bigleaf.net. So I'm gonna leave this poll open for a couple more seconds for anybody who would like to use it. In the meantime, Joel, any parting words of wisdom for folks who are getting these complaints and maybe frustrated with the state of things and video calls right now?
Yeah, I think just knowing is 3/4 of the battle. As we saw today, if I was just having choppy video and voice, it'd be pretty frustrating. But the fact that we could identify what's going on and where is so valuable. We take something that's very stressful and turn it into something you can act on. So I'm very thankful for that capability, and I know that a lot of Bigleaf customers, it's huge to them.
Fantastic. Well, thanks. And thanks again to everybody for joining us today. We are doing these every couple of weeks. We're trying to switch up the topics. If you have topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear your input, and we will continue to answer these questions as they come in. So thank you, Joel, and thank you, everyone else.
Thank you. Talk to you later.